The night I answered his phone wasn't supposed to mean anything. It was late. I was covering an extra shift at the front desk, the kind of dead hour where the hum of the vending machine feels louder than your own thoughts. He'd left his phone on the counter again, my manager, off somewhere in the back office. It buzzed once, then again. Same number. Unknown. I hesitated. Then I picked it up. Hello. There was silence first, that heavy kind, where you can almost hear someone's breathing. Then a woman's voice, low and steady, said, "You're not Mark." She didn't sound surprised, just aware. For a second, I forgot to answer. Something about her tone, not sharp, not warm, just certain, made me straighten up like I was the one who'd done something wrong. "No," I said finally. He stepped out for a bit. "Do you want me to tell him you called?" There was a pause long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, quietly, "No. I don't think he needs to know." The line went dead. I didn't know who she was, or why her voice stayed with me after that. But when Mark came back and grabbed his phone, muttering something about invoices, I found myself watching him, wondering what kind of woman could sound that composed at midnight and still carry that kind of exhaustion underneath. 2 days later, she walked into the hotel lobby. I didn't recognize her at first. She had one of those faces that makes you look twice, not because she was flawless, but because she looked like she'd already lived through 3 different lives and learned not to explain any of them. Her coat was neatly buttoned, hair pulled back like she didn't want to draw attention, but her eyes were searching for something. "Hi," she said, setting a folder on the counter. "I'm here to see Mark. He told me to drop these off." Her voice hit me the same way it had on the phone. Controlled, calm, but softer now, like she wasn't trying as hard to keep it together. "He's upstairs in the conference room," I said. "Do you want me to call him down?" She shook her head. "No, that's all right. I won't be long." Her fingers brushed the edge of the counter as she slid the folder forward, and for a moment I noticed her hand trembling. Barely, but enough to see it. She caught me noticing and smiled in that quick, polite way that people use to cover something deeper. "You're new here," she said. "Kind of," I replied. "Filling in until I figure out what I'm doing with my life." She smiled again, this time slower, like she understood that in a way only people twice your age can. "Don't rush it. Life figures you out eventually." That line shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. When she left, I caught a trace of her perfume in the air, something clean, like rain and paper. I told myself it was nothing, just a passing moment with a stranger. But later that night, when I walked past Mark's office, the folder she'd brought was still sitting unopened on his desk. He didn't even look at it. I stood there for a long time, staring at her handwriting on the label. It was neat, deliberate. Her name, Clara, written in blue ink. And I don't know why, but that name, that moment, that brief exchange, it followed me home. I told myself it was just curiosity, but it wasn't. It was the way she said, "You're not Mark," like she already knew she was talking to the wrong person, and maybe, somehow, the right one. Clara came back 3 days later. This time, she didn't ask for Mark. She asked for me. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind that makes the hotel lobby feel like a waiting room for people's second lives. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish and burnt coffee. I was restocking brochures when she walked in, her hair tied back again, a tired grace to the way she moved, like she'd been carrying too much for too long and didn't want anyone to notice. "Hey," she said, her voice a little softer than I remembered. "You're still here." "I guess I am," I said, smiling. "We don't let anyone escape easily." That earned me a small laugh, quick, but real. The kind that catches you off guard because it feels like it hasn't been used in a while. She leaned on the counter, holding a set of room keys. "Mark told me to drop these off, but he's not around again, is he?" I shook my head. "He's been in and out all day. Want me to leave them for him?" She hesitated, a small pause, barely a breath. "No, it's fine. I'll wait." Something about the way she said it made me look up. She wasn't looking at me, though. Her gaze was fixed on nothing, her thumb tracing the edge of a keycard slowly, like she was trying to focus on the motion just to stay still. "You can sit over there if you want," I offered. "I'll make fresh coffee, the kind that doesn't taste like regret." That got another smile. "That's a rare kind." I brewed the coffee in the small staff machine behind the desk, pretending not to glance at her too often. She was sitting near the window, light falling unevenly across her face. In the daylight, she looked even more human. Tiny lines around her eyes, the faintest bruise of exhaustion beneath them. There was something disarming about seeing someone who didn't try to hide how tired they were. When I brought her the cup, she took it with both hands, careful, like she didn't want to spill anything, or maybe didn't want to owe anything. "Thanks," she said. "You look like you've had a long week," I said before I could stop myself. Her lips parted, a small flicker of vulnerability flashing before she steadied it. "You could say that." Then, quieter, "It's been a long few years, actually." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't. I just nodded, and she seemed to appreciate that silence more than any polite words. After a while, she stood to leave. Her phone buzzed once in her hand, and I saw her face change, not dramatically, just a quiet dimming, like the light inside her lowered itself. "Everything okay?" I asked. She looked up at me, really looked this time, and smiled. But it was the kind of smile that tried to hide too much behind it. "Yeah," she said, slipping her phone back into her bag. "Everything's fine." But her voice said otherwise. She thanked me for the coffee and started to go. At the door, though, she stopped, just for a second, and turned slightly, her hand resting on the frame. "You're kind," she said. "Don't lose that. People will try to take it from you." Then she left, and the lobby felt colder, emptier, like she'd taken something with her that I hadn't realized I'd given. That night, I kept thinking about that line, "Don't lose that." She said it like she'd already lost it herself. And somehow, that thought hurt more than it should have. It was raining the night she asked for my help. The kind of rain that turns the parking lot into a mirror. Everything doubled, blurred, a little unreal. She called the front desk just before closing, her voice a soft tremor on the other end. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, "but my car won't start. I think it's the battery." Mark had left an hour ago. Everyone else had clocked out. It was just me, the rain, and her voice cutting through it. "I'll come take a look," I said before I could think twice. When I stepped outside, she was standing by her car under the dull orange glow of the streetlight. Her coat was soaked at the shoulders, hair clinging slightly to her neck. She looked smaller like that, not fragile, but real. Human in a way that people like her rarely allowed themselves to be. "I told you I shouldn't have called," she said, half laughing, half apologizing. "You probably think I'm helpless." "Not helpless," I said, taking the jumper cables from her hands. "Just unlucky." That made her smile, a faint one, but it stayed. We worked in silence after that. The rain softened to a drizzle, the air humming with that low electrical tension before the headlights flickered back to life. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You didn't have to." I shrugged, wiping rain from my face. "Guess I didn't want you standing out here alone." She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes lingered a little too long, just enough to blur the space between gratitude and something else. Something we both felt but weren't ready to name. "Do you want to come inside?" "Just for a minute, to dry off," she said. Her voice wasn't an invitation. It was careful, almost uncertain, like she already regretted asking. Inside her room, the air was warm and smelled faintly of rain and her perfume, that same scent I remembered from the lobby. She handed me a towel, and I took it without a word. We didn't speak for a while, just the sound of the storm outside, her pacing slowly, me standing near the window pretending to check my phone. Then it happened, that strange, quiet moment when silence turns heavy. When two people standing in the same room start hearing their own hearts instead of the rain. She sat down on the edge of the bed, rubbing her hands together. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" she asked suddenly. I turned. "All the time." She laughed, softly, but there was no joy in it. "I thought so." Her phone buzzed then, lighting up on the nightstand. A name flashed across the screen, Mark. We both froze. She didn't move, didn't answer, just stared at it until it stopped buzzing, the silence afterward louder than the storm. When she finally looked at me again, her expression had changed. The walls were back up, her voice steady. "You should probably go," she said. I nodded, stepping toward the door. But when I reached for the handle, she stood too, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her, the faint tremble in her breath. "Thank you," she whispered. I wanted to say something back, anything, but I didn't. I just nodded and left before the space between us could turn into something we couldn't take back. Still, as I walked away down the hallway, her reflection in the rain-streaked window followed me, the look on her face just before I left. Like she almost said something. And maybe I almost did, too. I didn't see Clara for a week after that night. I told myself it was for the best, that whatever we almost let happen in that hotel room needed to stay in the space between almost and never. But every night, when the rain started again, and it always did that week, I'd catch myself glancing at the front doors, half expecting her to walk through. When she finally did, it wasn't planned. She came in during my shift, no folder this time, no excuse to be there. Just her, quieter than usual, her hair loose, eyes rimmed with something she hadn't slept off. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal. "Hi." Her voice cracked on that single word, barely noticeable, but enough to shatter something small inside me. She leaned against the counter, arms folded. "I keep finding reasons to come here," she said, almost to herself. "It's pathetic, isn't it?" "No," I said softly. "It's human." Her eyes flicked up to meet mine. The silence that followed was thick, not awkward, just full. Full of everything we hadn't said, everything we pretended didn't exist. She sighed and looked away. "Mark and we're not together anymore. Haven't been for months, really. I just didn't want anyone to know." I didn't move, didn't speak. I just listened, because something in her tone told me this wasn't confession, it was exhaustion. I thought I could fix it. You spend years thinking love is about trying harder, forgiving longer. But sometimes, she paused, it's just about knowing when to stop trying. She laughed once, bitterly, and I stopped too late. I swallowed, searching for something to say. "You didn't seem like someone who gives up easily." "I don't," she said. Then she looked straight at me. "That's the problem." The world felt smaller then, like the lobby wasn't big enough to hold what was happening between us. Her fingers brushed the counter. Mine almost met them. Almost. "Clara," I started. Don't," she said quickly, shaking her head. "Don't say what you're about to say." I stopped. The air between us felt alive, like even breathing too deeply would make something irreversible happen. She closed her eyes. "What are we doing?" she whispered. You're too young to be standing in the ruins of someone else's life." I wanted to tell her it didn't feel that way, that this, whatever this was, didn't feel wrong. But she looked so tired, so raw, that the words just died in my throat. "I don't know what this is," I finally said, "but it doesn't feel like nothing." She smiled at that, small, sad, almost proud. "It isn't nothing," she said quietly. "That's exactly why it can't go anywhere." The sound of the lobby clock filled the silence between us, one steady tick after another, like time refusing to stop just because we had. She turned to leave, hesitated, then said without looking back, "You make it too easy to remember what it feels like to be wanted." Then she walked out, and for the first time, I didn't call after her. Because sometimes silence says the thing neither of you are brave enough to admit aloud. Clara didn't come by the hotel for almost 2 weeks after that night. The first few days, I told myself it was over, that whatever lived between us had burned itself out in silence. But then came the restlessness. The way I'd catch myself looking up at every passing car, listening for the rhythm of her heels across the tile floor. When she finally showed up, it was late, nearly closing. She wasn't dressed like she usually was. No coat, no careful composure. Just a loose sweater, hair unpinned, eyes red like she'd been crying and didn't bother to hide it. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded, unlocking the small break room at the back. The hum of the old refrigerator filled the silence as she sat down, hands wrapped around a paper cup of untouched coffee. "I went through some old boxes today," she said finally. "I shouldn't have. I found something." Her fingers trembled slightly as she pulled out a small photograph, edges worn, color faded. She slid it across the table. It was a picture of a boy, maybe my age, maybe a little younger, standing beside a woman who looked just like her, only lighter somehow, like life hadn't yet taught her to hold everything so tightly. "My son," she said. I didn't move. "He died 6 years ago. Car accident. He was 23. Her voice broke around the number, quiet but sharp. "And ever since that night in the lobby, you've reminded me of him. Not because you look like him. You don't. It's something else. The way you listen. The way you ask things like they matter." I didn't know what to say. The words stuck somewhere between compassion and confusion. "Clara." She shook her head, blinking fast. "I know how that sounds. I know what this looks like. She paused, pressing her hand against her chest as if trying to steady something inside. "I didn't realize it until you weren't there anymore." The hum of the fridge seemed too loud. I stared at the photo, the boy's smile, her younger face beside him, and suddenly everything about her made more sense. The pauses, the way she looked at me, the sadness that lived underneath even her laughter. "I'm sorry," I said, though I wasn't sure for what. She looked at me, really looked. "Don't be. You didn't do anything wrong. You just reminded me that I'm still capable of feeling something." I swallowed hard. "Is that bad?" "No," she whispered. "It's terrifying." We sat in silence, the kind that changes the shape of things. When she finally stood to leave, she reached for the photo, then stopped. "Keep it," she said. "Just for a while." I didn't understand why, not then. But I took it anyway. After she left, I sat there staring at the picture until the fluorescent light began to flicker overhead. I realized then, she hadn't come to close a door. She'd come to show me the one she'd never been able to walk through. And somehow, I was standing in the doorway of her grief, too far to help, too close to forget. The photo stayed with me longer than I expected. I kept it tucked inside my notebook at the front desk, never hidden, just close. Sometimes, on slow nights, I'd take it out and look at it. Not for the boy I didn't know, but for what it revealed about her. A softness I'd only seen in glimpses, the one she kept buried beneath composure and silence. She came back on a Sunday evening, the kind of night where the city felt like it was holding its breath. The lobby was empty except for her reflection in the glass doors. "You still have it," she said, her gaze falling to the edge of the photograph poking out from the notebook. "I didn't know if you wanted it back." "I don't," she said quietly. "I just wanted to see if you kept it." She walked closer, her steps slow, deliberate. There was something different about her, lighter maybe, not happy, but less afraid of the weight she carried. "I thought a lot about what I said," she began. "About you reminding me of him." She paused, her hands clasped in front of her. "It wasn't fair to you. You were honest," I said. "That's more than most people ever are." She smiled, a small, tired thing. "You sound older than you should." "I feel older than I am." She laughed softly, then turned away, rubbing her sleeve with her thumb, a habit I'd come to recognize when she was trying not to say too much. "Clara," I said, stepping closer, "you don't have to explain." But she shook her head. "I do. Because I don't want this to be another thing that ends without anyone saying what it was." The words settled between us, careful, fragile. I took a breath, searching for something that wouldn't make it worse. "Then what is it?" I asked. She looked up, eyes glistening but steady. "It's the first time in years I've let someone see me." Something in my chest shifted, a quiet ache that wasn't pain, but recognition. We didn't move closer. We didn't need to. The distance between us felt almost sacred, like crossing it would undo the honesty of the moment. Outside, rain began again, soft, unhurried. She stepped toward the window, watching it slide down the glass. "I don't think we can go back to pretending," she said. "I don't want to." She turned then, slowly, and for the first time, she didn't look guarded. She looked present, alive in a way that felt new. I don't remember reaching out, but my hand found hers. Her fingers tightened, not tentative, not desperate, just sure. We stood like that, in silence. No declarations, no promises, just shared understanding that something between us had shifted, quietly but permanently. After a while, she whispered, "You should let go first." "I will," I said, but neither of us did. The rain kept falling, and the world outside went on as if nothing had changed. But everything had, and maybe that was enough. It's been months since I last saw Clara. She moved out of the city not long after that night. No big goodbye, no promises to keep in touch. Just a folded note left at the front desk with my name on it. Inside was the photo I'd kept for her, and a single line written in blue ink. "Thank you for reminding me I was still alive." I read that line until it stopped hurting. Sometimes I wonder what she's doing now, whether she still walks through quiet hotel lobbies or listens for the rain the way she used to. I don't think she'd want to be remembered as the woman who almost fell in love with someone too young, or as the one who carried too much grief. She'd want to be remembered for how she survived it, how she found a way to keep moving, even when every step must have felt like dragging a shadow behind her. And me? I don't think I ever went back to who I was before her. I used to move through life like it was something waiting to start, a job I hadn't figured out, people I barely noticed, days that blurred into each other. But she made me pay attention, to quiet rooms, to unfinished sentences, to the way someone's silence can mean 100 different things if you care enough to listen. She taught me that love doesn't always arrive with certainty or timing. Sometimes it's just two lives brushing past each other at the exact wrong moment, leaving behind a mark you can't explain but will never forget. And maybe that's okay. Maybe not everything has to last to matter. There are nights I still catch myself glancing at the door when the lobby's empty, half expecting her to walk in again, coat buttoned, smile almost there. But she never does. And somehow, that absence has become its own kind of peace. Because the truth is, we didn't need forever. We just needed to meet. And in that brief, strange, quiet collision, I think we both found what we were missing.